With all the trade talks involving star players, it's getting to the point where these moves are simply unrealistic, and even if they did happen, I don't think it would elevate their team to true title contention. So let me show you 3 more low-key moves that would actually propel a team into real title contention if they're not already there. Trade 1. The Bucks land Time Lord. Starting with the Bucks, who had a rocky start to the season, and early there were trade rumors about blowing up the whole thing until they started to win games. Since the 2-8 start, Milwaukee have won the 3rd most games in the NBA over that period of time, only trailing Cleveland and OKC. Their defense has quietly been good, and the offense is coming along as well, but that doesn't mean there isn't any glaring weaknesses. As well as Bobby Portis has been playing in patches this season, it's becoming more apparent by the day that his fit with the team is just questionable at best. And that's been the case since Dame came in, replacing the more defensively minded Drew Holiday. When Milwaukee were a defensive team, they needed that offensive spark that Bobby gives them off the bench. But now that they're leaning to be a more offensive team, they no longer need that spark. Instead, a spark of defense would be ideal for this team. A big who could come in, slide his feet, and close out to the elite perimeter shooters of Boston, Cleveland, and New York. A trade I'd like to see the Bucks make is one for Robert Williams. To get Time Lord to Milwaukee, the Bucks could build a deal around a straight swap for Bobby Portis, as the two make the same money. However, the Blazers have made it clear that they want more than just a player in a deal for Robert Williams, potentially alluding to a first-round draft pick. Although the Bucks do have a 2031 first-round pick, which would be valuable considering where this Bucks team's going to be in 2031. But because of just how valuable the pick is, I don't see Milwaukee mortgaging their future for Robert Williams with this first-round pick. Because of this, either a third team would need to come into the picture, or Milwaukee add more value themselves. One way they could add value to the trade themselves is by adding Chris Middleton into the deal. As a Bucks fan myself, I'm usually advocating to not trade Chris Middleton because of how impactful he still is when healthy, especially considering the chemistry he has with this team. But the flip side is becoming more and more hard to ignore. For someone that you're paying over $30 million a year, you'd expect them to be available for back-to-backs and to be able to play in the high 30s in minutes per game. But Middleton hasn't been able to provide either of these things, and his fit in the starting lineup has also been so questionable that he's now coming off the bench for the foreseeable future. There's no doubt that he's still talented though, so if Milwaukee added him to the trade, they could get something back, and that guy would be Jeremy Grant. Grant, in my opinion, would be a perfect fit at the 3 for this Bucks team, providing effective shooting, defense, and athleticism, all things the Bucks lack and want in that starting lineup. This season, Grant is averaging 14.7 points per game on an effective field goal percentage of 47%. Now yes, those numbers aren't overly impressive, but considering the fact that he's getting less minutes and shots right now with the Blazers because of the young talent they're trying to develop, it makes sense why his numbers are down. But if we look at the seasons where he was getting more minutes and taking more shots, he was putting up over 20 points per game on an above 50% effective field goal percentage in the 2 seasons prior with Portland. Not only would this level of play be great for the Bucks, but he's also got some previous chemistry with Damian Lillard from their short stint as Blazers teammates. I believe this is the best deal for Milwaukee to get better quick, and it's also a smart financial move. Cutting $2 million in this deal, getting them closer to being under the second apron. Now let's look at trade 2, where the Lakers get big. The Lakers, despite their usual reputation, have actually gone under the radar as of late. They're the 5th seed in the Western Conference with a 26-18 record, and it's not just because of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They've been getting quality contributions from Max Christie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Austin Reeves, propelling this team forward. They're currently on a 4-game winning streak, but it still feels like this team is one move away from really contending, and Anthony Davis agrees.
What more can be done with this roster? Are you satisfied with the roster? Do you feel like you guys need some more here?
I think we need another big. I feel like I've always been at my best when I've been the 4. And having the big out there, we know it worked when we won the championship with JaVale and Dwight. I'm at the 5 and I'm at the 4.
When this Lakers team was at their peak, it was their overpowering size, floor spacing, and defense that paved the way for that championship run back in the 2020 Orlando bubble. In that championship run, LA played Davis at the 4, LeBron at the 3, while alternating between JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard at the 5, running out a jumbo lineup. These Lakers led the NBA in field goal percentage because of their size, while also ranking 1st in blocks, 7th in offensive rebounds, and 8th for free throws. I'm not sure why the Lakers went away from what won them a title, and it isn't like Anthony Davis has been quiet on how he prefers to play at the 4, as he lets you know any chance you give him. Jackson Hayes has played the 5 next to Davis this season for short stints, and it has looked good, but Hayes simply isn't the guy who can be the starter for this team. So the Lakers must make a move for a quality big. But the question from there is who? There isn't a lot of choices for big men in the NBA right now who would be available to be traded, but the 2 best options for their starting center would be the more defensively minded Walker Kessler from the Utah Jazz, or the offensive option being Nikola Vucevic from Chicago. For Walker Kessler, this trade would also give them another quality guard that they're missing with Colin Sexton, but to get those 2 guys, it would cost them their last 2 first-round picks, something this front office has recently came out and said they are unwilling to give up. But Kessler would be a great option. He's a solid defender and would be able to play the Dwight Howard JaVale McGee role just fine. And even though he's not spacing the floor, a Twin Towers defense of Kessler and Davis would be a nightmare. Then for Vucevic, the Lakers would likely have to send out Rui Hachimura, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and at least one of their remaining 2 first-round picks. Losing Rui would be tough, as he's been very good this season, but if the vision for this Lakers team is going back to the jumbo lineup, if he stays, he would have to come off the bench anyway, with LeBron now being at the 3. So it actually does make a lot of sense to give up Rui in this deal. For me, the defensive issues with Vucevic wouldn't be that big of an issue because of how good of a defender Anthony Davis is, while Vooch would make up for this with his great 3-point shooting for his position to space the floor. Now, yes, a lot of his touches would now have to come primarily from beyond the arc, which would limit his overall offensive game, but I do believe that Vucevic would be the best fit for the Lakers offensively that's on the market right now. However, recent reports from Mark Stein revealed that the Lakers are reportedly out on Walker Kessler, Jakob Poeltl, and Nikola Vucevic. For Kessler, it seems like he's untouchable for most teams now, due to the Jazz valuing him so high. Then for Vooch, the Lakers front office has apparently indicated that he's just too expensive, and the same has also been said about Jakob Poeltl, leaving us all wondering what on earth is going on. With Vooch, I do somewhat understand why the Lakers wouldn't want to give up heaps of value for a 34-year-old, but with Jakob Poeltl, I think it would be more than worth it given the fact that he's 29 years of age, and he's currently averaging 15 points and 10 rebounds on the season. So if the Lakers aren't interested in those guys, what does this leave them? Jonas Valanciunas appears to be the most gettable guy, but that's for a reason. While Valanciunas is a solid rebounder, he has the same defensive issues as Vooch while not spacing the floor either, making him not a great fit at all in my opinion. So the last option in my opinion is Clint Capella from Atlanta, who could be a solid get, and they could potentially get him for less than a first. In the deal for Capella, it would be Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, Jackson Hayes, and a second for Clint. Atlanta would likely ask for a first-round pick in the deal, but I believe the Lakers do have a chance to get this done by only using a second because of how badly the Hawks want to move on from Clint Capella to free up more minutes for Onyeka Okongwu. This is now looking like the most likely option, but if Atlanta are adamant that they need a first, then the Lakers go back to square one again with limited to no options remaining. The Lakers are running out of time and need to make a move to make the most out of what they currently have if they're actually going to contend for a title. Now, the third trade is Cam Johnson to OKC. The Thunder have been a dominant force all season long, and at the time of making this video, I would have them as the best team in the NBA right now, as they seriously have very little weaknesses. However, there is one, and that's their lack of elite 3-point shooting that's hurt them at times throughout this season, those times being no more apparent than the NBA Cup final against the Milwaukee Bucks. In that game, they shot just 15% from 3, as they were absolutely decimated in that game. The Thunder have a lot of guys who can shoot the 3-ball, but not at an elite level. Isaiah Joe would be the only guy on the roster who's a knockdown shooter, and in this deal they would add another with Cam Johnson. In a deal for Cam Johnson, OKC would send the Nets Ousmane Dieng and 2 first-round picks, one being Nikola Topic, who hasn't played a single game yet, and they'd also add Kenrich Williams to make the money work. Giving up a rookie contract is tough, but the Thunder need to use their assets if they want to win now. They can outbid any team for Cam Johnson, and I think it's worth doing. Getting him would add size and great shooting to the team, while they would also keep him away from other contenders who are looking to get him. For the Nets, this is a deal that they would do in their sleep, getting a very valuable 2025 first-round pick from the Jazz, and Topic, who was selected high also. Brooklyn would also be able to get some run into Ousmane Dieng, who's looked pretty good in his minutes, but because he's behind Holmgren and Hartenstein, he hasn't seen much court time. For the Thunder, Cam Johnson could start games if you need him to, but his likely role would be off the bench, providing them with what would be the best offensive spark plug in the NBA. He could also see time in the clutch, where his three-point shooting threat would provide SGA even more space to operate, or he could be the guy to bail you out of a bad possession off a catch-and-shoot look. Although it does seem like a hefty price to pay, he would be worth it, as he's averaging 19.4 points on a blistering 41% from deep and 61% effective field goal percentage. Having a scorer of this caliber off your bench would seriously push the Thunder over the hump, making them even more of a clear-cut favorite to make it out of the West, and potentially putting them in a position to win it all this season. But these are just my mock trades. Let me know a trade that you want to see come the trade deadline. I'll look forward to reading them in the comments section below.